Every draft you enter is a balancing act. Obviously, you have to take on risk if you want to get players that have elite level ceilings at a discount. You also have to make sure that you have some production in your starting lineup. So maybe you want to go through and grab some safer options. Maybe you want to go draft someone like Hunter Renfrow, who maybe is not going to be an elite level player this upcoming season, but hell, you know he's going to be a wide receiver 3 in fantasy. So in this video, I want to cover a couple of the wide receivers that I think could make or break your fantasy football season. And of course, all these guys are going to be coming at discounts because the red flags that they have. Now, with that being said, these guys also have elite level ceilings, which make them appealing in fantasy. So it's all about trying to find the price point that is right for you to go out of your way and for you to target them. So not every single player on this list is going to be someone I'm drafting. We are going to have a few guys that I'm drafting, a few guys that I'm avoiding, and I'd love to know your opinion down there in the comment section. But before we get into it, please go drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football and you want to join the flock. But that should be it. Let's go ahead and let's dive into our first wide receiver here. And I am not going to waste your time. Michael Thomas. I've talked about him over and over and over again. Everybody watching this video should know my opinion on Michael Thomas. This is a wide receiver that I personally am drafting because the entire fantasy football community knows the risk associated with Michael Thomas. And in my opinion, it has been baked into his price to an extreme level. With Michael Thomas, you have to admit, hell yes, there's a very low floor with this player. We didn't see him at all last year. I mean, in 2020, we barely saw Michael Thomas. We haven't seen Michael Thomas in almost 2 seasons, very similar to Christian McCaffrey, a player that was number 1 at his position in 2019 and then has vanished off the face of the earth because of injury concerns. Now, what's the difference between those two players? Where Michael Thomas was the number 1 wide receiver on a points per game basis, Michael Thomas went out there and truly was dominant in 2019, setting records just like Christian McCaffrey. Well, the entire fantasy football community, they're looking at CMC going, yes, there are injury concerns. Of course, we can't deny the fact that there are injury concerns, but the elite level ceiling that he possesses means we still have to draft him as a top 5 pick. There are people who have Christian McCaffrey ranked as the number 1 player overall, and that's balancing that top end upside combined with the risk that you have. Now with Michael Thomas, after that 2019 season, in 2020, he was the number 1 wide receiver selected in fantasy drafts. Last year, before it was reported that Michael Thomas was going to miss a large chunk of the season, he was going as a low-end wide receiver 1 in fantasy. So you did have injury risk baked into his price, but people were still willing to draft him as that low-end wide receiver 1 because of the raw upside he possessed. Well, what is the price point now? What should the price point be? After another setback, after missing an entire season, should he now be drafted as a low-end wide receiver 2? Should he be drafted as a high-end wide receiver 3? Should he be drafted as a mid-wide receiver? Where should you be willing to take that risk on Thomas? Because I'll tell you right now, most drafters are taking Michael Thomas as a wide receiver 4 in fantasy drafts. If you head over to Underdog Fantasy currently, on Underdog Fantasy, Michael Thomas is being drafted as the wide receiver 38. Michael Thomas is going back-to-back with Hunter Renfrow at the position. He's going behind DeAndre Hopkins, Drake London, Russell Gage, Adam Thielen, Devontae Smith, Elijah Moore. And I don't necessarily understand this because if we're looking at Michael Thomas, yes, it's not great that he's missing camp. It's not great that he's not participating with the team, but he is out there running routes. We've seen the videos on Instagram. Come on, I'm an Instagram scout at this point. And on top of this, you've seen Michael Thomas posting workout videos. Michael Thomas is preparing for the season. With Michael Thomas, yes, he's a diva wide receiver. We've dealt with diva wide receivers for years now. I think it's safe to say that Michael Thomas falls into that bucket, but does it seem like he still doesn't want to play football, as many people speculated last season? Not based on the workout videos he's putting up, not based on the fact that he's out there playing football. Well, I agree with you. Maybe Michael Thomas doesn't have it in the range of outcomes to yet again lead the NFL in receptions. It's not happening. They added in Chris Olave. They added in Jarvis Landry. Michael Thomas is not going to break his own record in NFL receptions this upcoming season, even if all goes right. Best case scenario, Michael Thomas is not what he was in 2019. but it's still entirely in the range of outcomes for Michael Thomas to be a top 10 wide receiver overall, even if we expect some regression with his target share in New Orleans. So with Michael Thomas, I will admit he's risky, but it's been over a year since his surgery. Over a year. He's out there running routes. He's out there working out. I'm sure he's been preparing for the season for a very long time now. And it's the beginning of July. Hell, we have another 2 months for him to get it together. We have another 2 months for him to be able to step onto that field in week 1, which I do think is going to happen. Now, let's move over to our next wide receiver who doesn't necessarily have any injury risk associated with him. Let's move over to a wide receiver that I am throwing in the risky category because he's being drafted for his elite level ceiling right now, and he's never shown this floor. Gabriel Davis on Underdog Fantasy is being drafted as the wide receiver 21. At the time of this recording, Gabriel Davis has an ADP of 46. This is ahead of Jerry Jeudy, Allen Robinson, DK Metcalf, Patrick Mahomes, David Montgomery, George Kittle, Brandon Cooks, and Lamar Jackson. And we can't deny the fact that you do have an elite level ceiling with Gabriel Davis. We saw it in the playoffs with Gabriel Davis. He goes out there, posts over 200 receiving yards in a single performance, 4 receiving touchdowns, and he has the exact situation you were looking for. There are a ton of vacated targets with the departure of both Emmanuel Sanders as well as Cole Beasley this upcoming season in Buffalo. You have probably some of the most efficient quarterback play in the entire NFL with Josh Allen, an offense that's both going to push the pace of play as well as have a very aggressive pass to run ratio in game neutral environments in Buffalo. But with Gabriel Davis, we do at least need to acknowledge the fact that if I go ahead and if I pull up my 2022 fantasy football draft guide to just check out this chapter on Gabriel Davis, nobody in this range of the draft is going to have these red boxes that he does. With Gabriel Davis, last year, he had a target share at 10.5%. He had a target share at 10.5% because Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders were both playing over him. Emmanuel Sanders was 33, 34 years old last season. Prime Emmanuel Sanders, yes, if you're playing behind him, I understand it. He's elite. He's fantastic. But 34-year-old Emmanuel Sanders, can we say the same thing? Is that a valid excuse for you to not get on the field in year 2 and for you to produce right away? So with Gabriel Davis, I'll admit I see the ceiling case, but I think drafters over there on Underdog Fantasy have maybe got a little ahead of themselves with this draft pick. I think you're almost drafting Gabriel Davis. I don't want to say at his ceiling because it truly is in the range of outcomes for Gabriel Davis to post the top 12 season this upcoming year if he takes all that Emmanuel Sanders volume and is efficient with it. It's in the range of outcomes for him to be a top 12 wide receiver. But the probability that he returns value on this ADP, I just can't imagine taking Gabriel Davis, someone that we've never seen average more than 3.9 targets per game in the NFL, taking him, 4 rounds before Michael Thomas? There are risks associated with both of these draft picks. I think they both have comparable ceilings, but I'm probably going to take the risk with Michael Thomas a little bit later. But real quick, if you think it's crazy that Gabriel Davis is being drafted at pick 46, being drafted before Patrick Mahomes, being drafted before David Montgomery, being drafted before George Kittle, and you want to go out there and you want to take advantage of that, make sure you go sign up for Underdog Fantasy on Underdog Fantasy. All these drafts are real money drafts. That's why this ADP set is so valuable. And when you go and sign up for Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. You'll get our 2022 rankings, our 2022 Dynasty Rookie rankings, our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide. You'll get our 2022... You'll get everything in a 100% deposit match. Most importantly, you can have fun with us drafting on the live stream or go draft in the public lobby. You can find the link down there in the description. But let's move on from Gabriel Davis. Let's go to a wide receiver that personally, I think it's going to be very much league dependent on if you're going to be drafting him. Let's look at Chris Godwin. With Chris Godwin, very similar to Michael Thomas. We know that if he is healthy and if he is out there playing, Chris Godwin's an elite level wide receiver. You're not going to be viewing Chris Godwin in a similar light as Gabriel Davis, where Gabriel Davis, of course, it's not a question on is he going to get on the field. We know Gabriel Davis is playing, but we don't know the production that's going to be associated with it. Chris Godwin, on the other hand, dear God, has a massive role in Tampa as is. Chris Godwin over the past 3 years has averaged over 8 targets a game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if we look at the vacated opportunity in Tampa with the departure of both Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski, who led this team in yards per route run. Last year, Rob Gronkowski and Antonio Brown were number 1 and number 2 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in yards per route run. They were elite level options. They are taking 151 targets. They are taking almost 1,400 receiving yards and 10 receiving touchdowns out of this offense. Now, of course, we can't say, oh, yeah, Chris Godwin's going to get all of this. No, Godwin was already elite last year. Chris Godwin was already a top 10 wide receiver. How are you going to expect him to add on 1,000 receiving yards? No, it's not going to happen. This is going to be divided up between a ton of the receiving options in this offense. You're probably going to have some going over to Russell Gage. Obviously, that's the favorite for it. You're going to have some going over to Cameron Brate, some going to Mike Evans, some going to possibly Leonard Fournette, Chris Godwin. Even Rachaad White may get involved as a pass catching running back just because this team is going to be desperate for weapons this upcoming season. But regardless, the baseline for a healthy Chris Godwin is the man is a top 10 receiver. Then you're adding this opportunity in this offense. Godwin, in games that he will be healthy this upcoming season, could potentially be the number 1 wide receiver overall. It's in the range of outcomes. He can easily be a top 5 option. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. And if we are looking at the risk associated with Chris Godwin right now, the risk is, hell, he misses the first month of the season. There are reports saying that he can easily go on the PUP. And if you just get out your little calendar, get out a little piece of paper, you draw 9 months out from his initial surgery at the beginning of January last year, hell, it makes a lot of sense that this is a player that may miss the first month of the season, may miss the first 4, 5, even 6 weeks is possible. So with Chris Godwin, when we're looking at his ADP right now, where he's being drafted as the wide receiver 29, so a wide receiver 3 in fantasy, we need to determine what makes sense here with Chris Godwin. Does it make sense to draft him in a best ball league where it's cumulative scoring, where your points in weeks 1, 2, 3, 4 matter just as much as your points in weeks 15, 16, 17? No, of course not. You're not drafting Chris Godwin there. Would you draft Chris Godwin in a best ball format that's a tournament structure where really the prices at the end are so heavily concentrated between weeks 15, 16, and 17, where we're trying to find an elite upside player that could make our roster a little bit different from the rest of the field during that time period? Hell yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for. And in a format like that, I'm all about Chris Godwin. Now, in terms of your regular redraft league, if you're drafting in a league where you're going to have to draft Chris Godwin and you're not going to be able to put him on the IR, if you have to put him on your bench and waste a bench spot through the first month of the season where you're not able to make waiver wire moves, you're not able to pick up the 2021 Elijah Mitchell, you're not able to pick up the 2020 James Robinson, and you're going to be handicapped overall by that selection, there, Chris Godwin, I'm probably not going to be drafting in round 5. I'm not going to be drafting him in round 6. The opportunity cost doesn't make sense because you're going to be burning that roster spot at the same time. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, what if you're going to be drafting in a league where you're able to draft Chris Godwin, then put him on your IR, assuming he goes on the PUP, and then all of a sudden you're able to call him up in week 5, week 6, week 7 without having to burn that roster spot at the beginning of the season? That's going to be the perfect league to draft Chris Godwin in. So this goes to truly understanding the league that you're playing in and how to make sure you're optimizing for your specific format. Godwin has an elite ceiling. The risk can easily be worth it. Just make sure you're taking that risk in the right spot. Now let's go over to our next wide receiver, someone else that's going to be in an elite passing offense. Let's go over to Juju SmithSchuster. Now, Juju SmithSchuster is also being drafted as a low-end wide receiver 3, and I have to admit something every time I bring him up. Every time I bring up Juju, I have to talk about the fact that I am an idiot. So dumb. After the 2018 season, where Juju SmithSchuster was 21 years old, posted a top 10 finish, had over 100 receptions, I was looking at that and saying, you know what? In Dynasty Fantasy Football, he's an elite level asset. In Dynasty Fantasy Football, if you want to have him as your wide receiver 1 overall, I'm not going to argue with you. Hell, I have him easily inside the top 3, which I don't think that was that dumb during the time being. Yes, smarter people than me were saying, you know what? The departure of Antonio Brown is going to hurt more than it will help. I wasn't smart enough to see that. But what was truly idiotic by myself is after Juju SmithSchuster failed in 2019, I made excuses. I said, okay, look, Juju, he had his knee injury, and at the same time, he was dealing with a hamstring injury. Ben Roethlisberger missed the majority of the season. Getting Big Ben back in 2020, that's going to allow Juju SmithSchuster to return as a top 12 wide receiver. Buy low, buy low, buy low. Easiest buy low of our lifetime. Yeah, we know how that played out. You got to 2020. Juju had really no excuses whatsoever. He failed. He failed. In 2021, he goes down for the year. And with Juju SmithSchuster, it's not like it was because the offense was horrible. Deontay Johnson this past season was a mid-wide receiver one. He did that with 39-year-old Ben Roethlisberger. With Juju SmithSchuster, you had a fall off across the board. In 2019, this was a wide receiver that had 1.5 yards per route run. 1.5. In 2020, this was a wide receiver that, yeah, he finished as the wide receiver 24 on a points per game basis. Bravo. But no, you were trash. 1.4 yards per route run. That is laughably bad. That is very, very, very bad. And now to see Juju SmithSchuster go over to Kansas City, people are buying back in on the hype. Now, I am going to be hesitant because here with Juju, the last 3 years of football he's played, he's been a very bad wide receiver, regardless of whatever metric that you want to look at. And one reason that I am terrified of Juju is the contract he got this offseason. Now, with Juju SmithSchuster, this is a wide receiver that's going to be 26 this upcoming season. Still incredibly young. And we saw the market for wide receivers this offseason be heavily inflated. You had Russell Gage getting paid $30 million to go to Tampa. Allen Robinson, $30 million guaranteed to go to Los Angeles after his own struggles last year. Christian Kirk gets a $72 million contract. Hollywood Brown's being traded for a first-round pick. A.J. Brown's being traded for a first-round pick and then getting the contract extension. So if you're looking at a Juju SmithSchuster, DJ Chark got $10 million. Let me throw that on there as well. What are we expecting? Oh, Juju, I would assume that the market, gives him a one-year deal for $10, $11, $12 million. The man was paid $2.5 million guaranteed. Now, there are incentives on this deal. He can make a lot more than that. But $2.5 million guaranteed. That is what the NFL is telling us of Juju SmithSchuster at this point. So even though people are coming out and saying, hell, it's the offense, look at how many vacated targets there are. Not only is Tyreek Hill leaving, but on top of this, you have the departure of Byron Pringle. On top of that, you have the departure of Demarcus Robinson. So all of a sudden, if I just go through, let me pull this up on our draft guide because we have all of this very clearly laid out. You have 317 targets, 2,500 receiving yards, and 19 receiving touchdowns leaving this offense. Now, of course, there's no way Juju gets half of that. That's going to be divided between Juju SmithSchuster, Sky Moore, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Travis Kelce, maybe even Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Mecole Hardman. It's going to be divvied up. But still, 317 targets, 2,500 receiving yards, and 19 receiving touchdowns leaving this team. For Juju, it comes down to the price point that you're going to be paying. I would say at this point of his NFL career, I don't see the same upside that you would have with Chris Godwin. I don't see the same level upside that you would have even with the Michael Thomas. And you're having to pay rounds more on that price tag. Juju SmithSchuster right now going in the 5th round on Underdog, going right before Darnell Mooney, Josh Jacobs, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts, and Chris Godwin. So I have lost a lot of money on Juju SmithSchuster in the past. I've caused other people to lose money on Juju who's been dumb enough to follow my advice. I'm going to try to not go down that same path this season. I think I'm going to prefer Josh Jacobs. I'm going to prefer the elite level quarterbacks in Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts because I think the access that those quarterbacks have to an elite level ceiling, probably too much to pass up on. Now, let's go ahead and move on to our last wide receiver that has had negative report after negative report after negative report come out on him. Let's go over to Treylon Burks in Tennessee. Now, with Treylon Burks, yes, this is a wide receiver that reportedly had asthma, had to sit out of practice, yada, yada, yada. And there have been reports saying Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is the wide receiver 2 in Tennessee, that Treylon Burks is the wide receiver 3. Is this anything new? is this not the oldest story that we've read every single offseason? Like, how do you have such short-term memory to realize that this is what coaching staffs do? They look at the rookies coming in and say, yeah, you were drafted in the first round. Yeah, Treylon Burks, you check every single box we look for. Yeah, Treylon Burks, you broke out at an early age at Arkansas. Yeah, Treylon Burks, we spent the 18th overall pick on you. Yeah, you dominated with almost 46% of your team's receiving yards on a per game basis in the SEC, but nothing's going to be handed to you. There have been guys in this building for years. We've been paying these professionals for years who've been showing up to work every single day. You're not the immediate wide receiver one the day you step onto this team. The only instances where that was probably not the case, Sammy Watkins, Amari Cooper, Jamar Chase. I mean, yeah, there would be some instances with truly special level prospects where they step in the building and you're not going to have the coaching staff saying that they have work to do and they need to move up the depth chart. But this has caused a discount on Treylon Burks now. If we go out of our way and scroll down this draft board, keep scrolling, Treylon Burks now is going at pick 90. Treylon Burks is going as the wide receiver 44 behind Kadarius Toney, behind Christian Kirk, right before Tyler Lockett, Sky Moore, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. With Treylon Burks, I think this new price point makes him not only worth the risk, but I think based on the factors that are depressing his overall cost, I think he's one of the best buy low candidates in drafts at this moment. So personally, I'm all about drafting Treylon Burks as the wide receiver 44. This is a man that accounted for almost 46% of his receiving yards on a per game basis at Arkansas. What else do you need to hear? You're worried about asthma when he did that? When he was on the field? I'm sure he's been dealing with this his entire life. It's nothing new. He's going to be fine. He's not going to be playing behind Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. He will be an every down player for the Tennessee Titans. And I think he does have access to being a top 15 wide receiver easily this upcoming season. Now, thank you, of course, for being a part of the Flock Sport of the channel. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe. And yeah, that's all I got for you. I hope you have a great day and hope we get to see you with the video tomorrow.